It's been 5 years since I joined the tech industry, and in this video I just want to talk about how I got started, what I've learned, and any tips and advice that I can share that might help anybody looking to get into the tech industry. Anybody new to the channel, I'm Chris, I'm an engineer. I've been working as a cloud engineer for the last 5 years, working with Google Cloud and also Kubernetes. Going back to when I finished school, which was maybe like 2007, maybe something like that. It was around about that sort of time. I finished school, I attempted college, I did 1 year, I failed. I attempted a second year, I failed again, or rather I dropped out after 3 months because it just wasn't working for me. So I just got straight to the working world. So I went out and I got my first job, which was working in a coffee shop, which, I loved it. I really, really loved working in the coffee shop. It was a great job, but unfortunately, it's hard work and it didn't always pay the bills that I was generating for myself, which we're all guilty of doing. So that originally started sort of like my chase for money, right? So obviously I wanted to buy a car and I wanted to move out and I wanted to do all this stuff. So over the course of the next 14 years, right, which saying it out loud makes me feel, like what did I even do with them 14 years? If I really think about it, I did a lot of jobs. I worked in a bakery. I worked in aviation, right? None of which were long-term careers for me because either I was already management in this one, so I couldn't really go a lot further. The company was small and there was no room for growth, so that forced me to change. On top of that, the fact that I was doing maybe 40 hours a week. Sorry, I was contracted 40 hours a week, but I was maybe working something like 50 to 60 hours a week. Yeah, not fun. And then I jumped into another job. It was working for TUI, and I started again. I worked my way up through like the commercial industry, which then led to the more aviation side of the jobs. Again, chasing money. All this time, all these changes, they were either changing for financial gain or for better work-life balance. When I moved to like the aviation side, I started doing some shift work, which was nice. I did like 4 on, and then I did 4 off, which in terms of home life and family life, it was great. It totally worked. But yeah, it was okay. But it was around, so that's the 14, so let's say 2019, right? So 2019, I decided I need a career. So at this point, I'm like, 30 years old. And I'm now deciding that I want a career in my life. So I sat down and thought, what do I want to do that I'm going to enjoy, right? So it needed to meet certain criteria. So it needed to be fun, right? Because I wanted to enjoy my job. It needed to do me for like the next 30 years. So like another 30 years, right? Because the way retirement was going, the way retirement is still going, it might even be closer to 40 years. Who knows, right? And I need it to be like lucrative, right? I needed to start making some money so that I could actually progress in life and maybe like save some money, prepare for retirement and stuff like that. Because my current plan, there was nothing. I was just living. And I became somewhat comfortable, and oh well, here we are, right? So yeah, 30 years, that criteria. I had a look. I Googled. I went on Indeed, looking at jobs and seeing what would actually pay well. And the first thing that kind of came up that hit the 3 criteria was working in IT. Now, I didn't want to be a help desk for my entire life because it's hard work. It's going back to the call center style that I did before. But from everything that I read and researched, that's it. That was my entry point. So like service desk was my entry point, and everyone had to pay their dues, right? Everyone who wants to work in IT has to do this first. least this was the case 5 years ago and what everything was saying online. So I looked at the opportunities, didn't really fancy big data, even though what an awesome place to be right now. But I did fancy networking. I found that it was pretty cool, so I looked into the CCNA. At the time, this was the go-to. This was, if you want a job in IT, get your CCNA. It was Cisco accredited. It was so well recognized that if you got your CCNA, people were just like, yeah, here, have a job, no problem. Yeah, don't worry about it. And so it was awesome. So I self-studied for like the next 6 months, I think it was, doing my CCNA, which at the time was a 2-part exam. Right, there was the CCNA part, and there was a CCENT, I think it was called. Don't ask me what the abbreviation is, I do not remember. But at the time you could take it as a 2-part, which made it easier to a degree, but also the exam was the same length. So really it was just double the work. But yeah, if you got halfway, it felt better. So going along our timeline, we're now at 2020, so 6 months post when I decided to change my life. And it was, I think it was around May 2020, I got my first tech job, right? LinkedIn, great tool. I was posting, I was sharing my certification. LinkedIn was a great place to share your certifications and just, get it out there, making it public. And somebody reached out to me and they asked if I was interested in doing this job. And it was part of a NOC team. It was a brand new NOC team. So it was going to be, this service desk style thing, which was perfect because that was an intro. They wanted Cisco stuff, which I had. And yeah, I was in the door. I took that straight away. And that was my first IT job. I did that for, what was it? I've got it down here. It's like 2 years. 2 years. And in that time, so let me just clear this. Right. So, NOC job, NOC, and that was 2020. Okay, so in 2020 to 2022. In this time, I knew I needed to make the most of my situation. It was a good company in the sense that they funded a lot of educational stuff. So I abused that heavily. In that time, I got 4, maybe 5 VMware certifications. VMware, right? I got 3 or 4 VMware certifications, right? You know what I'm trying to say. I recertified my CCNA, I think. So I did my CCNA again, right? I got my CCNP core, which is part of an exam. It doesn't really count for the full CCNP, but it was like the stepping stone to get the full CCNP. But the real moneymaker and game changer for me was around, I don't know, maybe this point here. The company wanted to try cloud because at the time we weren't doing it. We were heavy VMware. We had our own data center that was in London, which I also got to go to and work with. And well, yeah, that was an experience. You know what it's like if you had to lift a server by yourself. Yes, it's a risk, but it's a miracle when you get it out there. You're not like crushed by some server. They wanted to experience cloud, and they had a project, and it was a NetApp ONTAP, right? Which is like NetApp's a big storage solution service. They do loads and loads of stuff, and this ONTAP was sort of like I can't remember exactly how it worked, but it was like a file caching system, and they wanted to use it with Google. Now, to use it with Google, they needed to get the best price, the best bang for buck for the company to use Google as their platform, they needed partnerships. And to get partnerships, you need certifications. So I was like, give me it. Give me that certification. I will do it. So I did. I went in and I got my GCP Cloud Architect, right? And that's a professional certification, which I've done it twice now. I'm due for a renewal again this year. And yeah, it's a tough exam. It's not impossible, but it is definitely a tough exam. But yeah, and that was it. That was my first intro to cloud, and it's changed my world. Now, in addition, so we had maybe GCP here, right? And then here, I had Kubernetes. Now, at the time, we were looking at, can't remember what it's called, but VMware, right, had their own sort of like solution for Kubernetes. It was like a VMware hosted Kubernetes solution. But to get a certain certification, which at the time was a really cool thing to have, you needed to have your CKA, right? You needed to have your CKA, and you needed to have a VMware, right? I don't know why I do this. It's because I'm highly dyslexic, so, plus a VMware certification, which gave you this like VMware super status of a Kubernetes expert, something, I don't know. But yeah, that's what I went for. And that was, not long before I left. And I did that as well. So this plus my Google led me to everything that I have today and everything that I do on a day-to-day basis. So, if I clear this up now, it's clear. Clear that up now. So my GCP obviously led to cloud, right? Which led to storage and networking. And probably one of the biggest one that it led to was Terraform, right? Which is spelled something like that, and that's infrastructure as code tool, which is super important. Especially if you're going to be something like a platform engineer or a cloud engineer, it's the go-to tool. I mean, not necessarily Terraform, though it is very popular, and I love Terraform. Just like native Terraform, perfectly fine. TerraGrunt, not a fan. TerraSpace, I'll use it if I have to, but it's not my go-to. So 2022 to 2024 was even more educational. So whilst I 100% absorbed and abused as much as people's knowledge and shadowing and learning, 2024 I moved on and I did 1 year of cloud consulting. So I was working for a company where I was building infrastructure on Google Cloud, so on GCP, because that is what I've known, using infrastructure as code and working on projects and just doing that, working with them, consulting with them, building everything, designing it, and it was really, really good. I actually learned a lot in this 1 year. Like I actually learned loads. And it was a really, really good job. And anyone looking to do cloud stuff, doing consultancy is a fantastic way to get sort of like the architect and design side down. Fantastic. And then the following year, I did one, just nearly 2 years. It was just over a year. This was with another company who recently lifted and shifted to GCP. So GCP again. The day-to-day was all infrastructure as code, and all their services, because it was a fairly well-established company, were on Kubernetes. So again, it's these two things these three things. They're everything that I've kind of done over the last 5 years and just repeated over and over again. And each time I've just developed further and further. So the main areas that I learned over the years and focused on and developed are the infrastructure as code, Kubernetes, which is something I'm still working on now, and it's going to be in a never-ending growing space, and a cloud service, which for me, it is GCP, right? And that's my bread and butter, that's what I go to, and that's what I like. I have played with Azure, I've built stuff on Azure, I've built stuff on AWS, but if you were to come at me and ask me and say, hey, which one do you work on? This is what I work on. That's perfectly fine. And there were some additional like little soft skills in there, like scripting, with. I mainly script with Bash. I can force myself to do some Python, but I wouldn't say that I know Python by any means. Not at all. It wouldn't be my go-to for automation. As much as I'd love to do it, I'm still building so much knowledge with Kubernetes that I just haven't got the time to be building Python, as well as also developing the infrastructure as code, as well as always developing my GCP, and then looking at the certifications for it as well. It's just, this is the world that I now live in. So 5 years later, what have I learned? Well, a lot of things, really. Imposter syndrome is a real thing, right? Yeah. I feel like this every single day. I'm sat here and I work with people who have been doing this job for 10 to 20 years, and I am sitting alongside them, sometimes contesting what they're saying, saying, there's another way of doing it, or can we do it another way? And it's a difficult position to be in. But the fortunate thing that has happened is then previous years, the 14 years of question mark, right? That was like, what did I do for them 14 years? I've learned soft skills. I've learned how to handle confrontation in the workplace. I've learned how to speak to stakeholders. I've learned how to communicate, commercial awareness in terms of cost. And these 14 years weren't a waste. They weren't a waste. I thought they would be. But really, the soft skills that they provided me, that I learned, I use in a day-to-day basis in communicating with my team, communicating with management, and communicating with people outside of the business. These have also helped me interview really well. What would I say to somebody looking to get involved now in the tech space, right? Somebody that perhaps, like me, a late bloomer, starting late in life. What would I say? Just do it, right? Just do it. I did it at 30. I know people, 30, 31 technically. I know people that have done it much later than that. I know people that have started in 40, and they're perfectly fine. They can do it. It's not hard. I would say pick your path, right? So if you're going to be a data engineer, do data, right? Okay, learn data, and then learn some supporting subtopics. If you can do cloud, right? And then learn supporting things, like infrastructure as code. Huge part of cloud. Understanding this is one thing, understanding this is another thing, because these two actually just work together all the time. You won't be going into a production environment building cloud through like the UI, right? If you want to learn Kubernetes, learn Kubernetes, and then learn a sub. So something like a cloud-hosted Kubernetes, so like GKE, which is Google's flavor, right? So with that one, they manage the control plane, so you don't have to. But if you learn this and you understand it, this will be fairly easy. And one of the things, the main thing to avoid at all costs, is tutorial hell, right? Just don't do it. This is a bad thing to get stuck in, and I've done it a few times actually. I've done it this year, I did it last year, I did it the year before, and it's just where you start a course and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do another course, and I'm going to do another one, and another. The next thing you know, this process has taken like 6 months, and you're like, that's 6 months where really, once you've done these courses, have you done any real practical work? Have you done any home labbing, any practicing? That's what you need to do. You pick a course or find something and practice it. Like in a real world situation, build a home lab and just do it. If you were going to build a Kubernetes, then you build a little VM and you work on that. If you're going to work on Google Cloud, they have a free account for, I think it's like 90 days, or it's 90 days and you get credits. So you get like 300 credits worth of workspace. If you're going to do Azure, they have a free tier. If you're going to do it AWS, they have a free tier. You know, all these services have their own free tiers that you can just get started with. And then there's cheap ones as well. You things like Linode, who offer and host cheap services, and you can get started with them. So what does 2025 look like for me? 2025 for me is I'm going to be doing my CKAD. I've got a couple more Kubernetes ones. My plan is to be an astronaut by the end of it. That would be nice, right? Because that's just a really cool thing. Don't need it, but it sounds cool. And then also I need to do my GCP. So they're things that I'm going to be talking about and sharing my experience and things that I've learned whilst doing. And this is all on top of just my day-to-day of working with, you know, GCP, Terraform, with infrastructure as code and Kubernetes. Now, I hope this has been helpful to some people, and if anybody's in this sort of like space to think about getting going, think about starting in tech, leave a comment down below. If anybody's gone through this journey, then please share that as well, and I'll see you in the next one.